So I'm going to begin with almost end of the group of 22 letters. This week we're in the letter Resh. And so far we've done a whole load of the letters of the Hebrew AlefBet. We've done AlefBet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zain, Het, Tet, Yud, Kaf, the two types of Kaf, Lamed, Mem, the two types of Mem, Nun, the two types of Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, the two types of Pei, Sadi, the two types of Sadi, Kof, and now we're in Resh, and then we've only got Shin and Tav to go. So we're marching on with these letters. And this is Resh, Resh or Resh. It's the 20th letter of the Hebrew AlefBet, obviously, because there's 22, and we've only got 2 more to go after this. And its numerical value is 200. So, as you know, it's 20 in the order of the letters, but because Hebrew also counts in, uses letters for counting, after the letter, the 10th letter, it goes 20, 30, 40, 50, and then it suddenly becomes 100, 200, 300, and 400. And then we're at the end of all of these letters. So that's how it works. The Resh, 200 in counting forms, but 20th letter in the AlefBet. Now, in the list of where they made the sounds, that where the sounds come from, because the sounds are engraved into the universe. When you make a sound, that sound goes out and affects all the atoms around it that are bouncing around. So what you say has a huge effect on the universe. When they talk about where the letters are engraved, they tend to say Resh is in the teeth, the R, very much the Resh up here. But I think Resh is also not just as Resh, but we have a way of saying Resh, Resh, right back in the throat. So it's kind of got two types of Resh and Resh. And I think there's 2 places. So I'm having an argument in my head where I think the Resh and Resh come from. It is a double letter, that might explain it, but you never tend to see it with the dot or the dagesh in it. You just tend to see it in this form. And it's easy to muddle up the R and D, the Resh and the Dalet. This is the Resh and the Dalet. The Resh looks like an individual who's bent over, whereas the Dalet has this extra little bit at the end. They're both composed of these 2 lines, though, one going across that way and one going down that way. So they're very easy to model up, just like the bait and the kaf, whether it's got the extra bit on the end of the bait or just rounded like the kaf. So I should show you what I mean in the letters up here. Sorry, my cursor doesn't want to go always. This is the bait, a double letter that has a dot or not in, and the kaf can be easily muddled up with it. Well, this is the Resh, and it can easily be muddled up with a Dalet. So you have to be careful when you're looking at these, how they're, what they actually look like. And confusingly, of course, there's different ways of drawing it. In the ancient Hebrew, it actually looks quite like a Dalet. Most scripts make it look more rounded, and this is the normal one. But modern cursive, when people are writing it, it becomes much more rounded, and it does look more and more like a cuff. And so it's quite easy to muddle all these letters up, and not only muddle them up as letters, but they have different meanings to them as well, you know by now. So the Resh looks like an individual's bent over, and is said to signify a sort of poor person, particularly in this more exaggerated form, obviously, than a slightly more upright form that they do it in to distinguish it from the kaf. It looks very similar to the Dalet, but the Dalet has that yud on the end, that extra little bit that sticks out, this yud bit here, and the Resh doesn't. And the yud represents one who is also subservient to God, but it's that little yud is sort of hangs up in the air. It's the sort of letter that connects up into the heavens, and so the Resh is missing that bit. So the Resh, they say, represents intellect and speech, but because there's no yud in it, the speech and the intellect of the person are saying it for their own ego, for their own gratification, not for holiness, and therefore it can degenerate and become corrupt and evil. And that's a problem with what we call lashon hara, hara being the bad. Lashon is actually the tongue of the speaking, and it's one of the worst things you can do is say lies and bad mouth and gossip. It's the cause of nearly all disasters, is fake news, something that we're suffering from a lot at the moment. So the Resh, there's 2 lines, intellect and speech. The Talmud says that the physical world is created with a hey, because we say that the world is spoken into being. All letters start with the sound, not necessarily what it looks like, but the sound of the hey, because it's got that sound to it, and you have to breathe out to make sound, to get the air over your vocal cords. And so all the physical world is started with a hey, but the world to come is created with a yud. And so lacking that yud in the Resh is quite a significant part. The Dalet, which has the yud in, is someone who always has in mind that this world to come will come. A Resh, however, is a person who doesn't care about it so much. So the Resh is the unholy counterpart to the Dalet. It's missing that yud, and because of that, it's trapped in this world of speech and intellect and not into the higher world. There's also a big thing about making sure you see the Resh rather than the Dalet, or vice versa. So in the word echad, it means one, and if it ends with a d, and if you substitute the Dalet, it can become echad, which means another god, an other. And so we're very keen on making sure that these lines are very clear. And that's very much in a very important prayer that we have, the Shema prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God. The Lord is one, not echad, but echad. So echad would mean an other, as in another God. And so in the prayer book, the Dalet is made very big to make sure that you know it's a Dalet and not a Resh. So very important, these distinguishing parts. Why? Because the Resh words, a lot of them have other problems are associated with things that aren't so great. A Rasha is a wicked person and contains rash, which means poverty, but it might not be a poverty of just of money. It might be a poverty of speech and of intention, intellectual intention. It's not being of holiness, and so it's not necessarily just a wicked person, or wicked are poor and poor are wicked, or something like that. There's not that connection, although the words look very similar to one another. The poverty might be because of being a bad person, not anything to do with the lack of money. But also a re'ut is friendship. It's quite a common name in Israel, re'ut, meaning friendly, and rogah, tranquility, rof, softness, ritzinut, meaning seriousness, and rashimo, a plan, an impression, an idea, which I'm going to come to in a second. But the ones most people think of are Rash and Rasha when you think of our words, the bad ones, not the good ones. Resh, the 20th letter, this part, also the word for this letter is Resh, and that also means head, leader, and beginning. So there's other things associated, not just wicked and poor or some sort of poverty. It's a symbol of choosing between greatness and degradation, basically. You can become the head, the leader, the Resh, and in fact, the head of a seminary. In Hebrew, the seminaries are called yeshivas. The head of it is called a Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the seminary. But if you're a Rash, you this poverty, poor, or Rasha, even this really bad version of you, but with a change of vowel, you can become a Rosh. And so a Rash, this poor person, becomes a Rosh with this great idea. If you have this Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew AlefBet. And Reshima, the word I was talking about before, this one, Reshimo, impression or diagram or whatever, is also something, a Resh word that is about our spiritual DNA, what we're meant to explore in life. We are all made in the expression of God, the likeness. And so we have this that we should be exploring all the time. Resh, the letter Resh also comes up in the very first word of the Torah, of the Tanakh, the Torah being the first 5 books of the Tanakh, of the Hebrew Bible. It comes up in the word, the very first word is Bereshit. It goes, Bereshit bara Elohim. In a beginning, God created. And Bereshit is in Rosh, in ahead, in the start, in the first. And so a Rosh is, as I said, a head as well. And it also has a sort of hint at a crown that sits on the Rosh. The highest of the Sephirah, the 10 Sephirah of Kabbalah, Keter is a crown. And obviously the crown sits on your head. So there are those connections as well. And I like the idea that Resh, this poverty and badness, can be transmuted into a head, leader, and the start of something fabulous. And so the Resh is more wretched than the Dalet. The Dalet was a poor person, but the Resh is somebody who has no knowledge or desire to have knowledge, and it can therefore become Rashad, really evil and bad, and speak terribly and be spiritually bereft. But it takes very, very little to turn somebody from this Rashad into a Rosh. And we have a lot in the Hebrew texts, commentaries around the Torah about turning from being a bad person into being a good person. And it's called a Baal Teshuvah. A person, teshuv means to turn back. And shuv is the word for turning around. And a teshuv is a person who turns themselves back to the right way. And all you have to do is turn yourself back to the right way. The other link between the head and the crown is this Resh letter. If you completely keep drawing it round more a bit, it becomes a kaf, and that's a keser. That's the crown that sits on the top of it, your head. There's other lots of other links as well, but I won't go into all of them. But I'll just remind you a little bit of what we mean by Kabbalah, because I'm talking about the 22 letters of the Hebrew AlefBet and then the 10 Sephirot. And together, these 10 Sephirot and the 22 letters make 32. And those are the 32 gates of wisdom that open up the entire first part of the Torah, which I'll tell you about again in a moment. And so this is the keter, the crown of that on which sits on the head, obviously, and the head part is this part here, which is wisdom and understanding, and this extra little sephirot is put in that links these two, called knowledge. Lots of people just have knowledge, but they don't have wisdom or understanding. They know lots and lots of stuff, but they don't have any wisdom associated with it. They're clever clogs. And then we have these 7 emotional attributes that all of us have in different amounts. Love and restraint. Gevura, they've translated it as power, but it's restraint, so that you have boundaries. And Tiferet is beauty, but also harmony. Netzah, endurance. Hod, splendor. Yesod, foundation. And Malchut, kingdom. And the Resh is this letter here that's linking this balance between Tiferet, this beauty, balance, harmony, and Yesod. So it's quite a powerful one. Yesod being foundation. It's quite a powerful letter. And in the more ancient descriptions of these letters, we know that house is bait and Dallas is door. We've done that before. But here they have Resh as head, not as something bad. They have it as a head. Although it's Resh is nearly at the end of the AlefBet, they are saying, I know the words that we associated with it are Rash and Rasha, but actually the word Resh really should be more for the head, the start of something, even though this is coming near the end of the AlefBet. And there are 4 beginnings in the AlefBet, very comparable to, we have 4 New Years. So we have not just Rosh Hashanah, everybody knows about, but we've got the New Year for trees, and New Year for animals, and New Year for the king, I think. Just like in England, we have the January the 1st is the start of the solar year. September is the start of the academic year. April is the start of the tax year. And we have spring coming in March as the start of the seasons here, spring, summer, autumn, winter. So everybody's got lots of New Years. So in Hebrew, there's the 4 starts. The ordinal one being the AlefBet. The Aleph is the start of the AlefBet. We start with Aleph. Phonetically, though, as I said, all the letters start with the He, because you have to say before you can say anything. So the He is almost the first of the sounds. In script, every letter has to start with a point. You can't just start with a line. You have to put the pen onto the paper. And so there's this secret sort of letter, this tiny point, the Yod, is the script version. So we've got the alphabet, the sound version into the universe, the written version, and then the Resh, meaning beginning. So this is our intelligence, our wisdom when we begin something. The 4 letters together, the Aleph, He, Yod, and Resh, spell Ariach in Hebrew, which means lion, the first of the 4 holy animals of the divine chariot of Ezekiel. And they can also combine in different ways to spell Yira, fear or awe. You are meant to balance your love of God with your fear. Awe more than fear. Love and awe. My goodness, wow, sort of reaction at the same time. So Resh has this idea of beginnings as well as of oh dear, I've done something stupid. Has this idea of beginnings as well as of being this bad version. Sorry, I seem to have gone back. The gematria of Resh is 200, as I've said, for the actual letter is the 20th letter, but 200. And there's not a lot about 200, except in there's a comment in the Talmud that a poor person, and a Resh is a poor person, not in the same way as a dalet, but sort of. They're permitted to collect charity from a synagogue if they don't possess 200 zuz. A zuz is a form of money like a shekel, but a smaller amount. The moment the person has 200 zuz, he is no longer considered to be poor. And I like that idea. There has to be boundaries with everything. And when people ask, for donations all the time, sometimes they've become reliant on it, and they've been donations for years and years. And you see them living in very nice places and still asking you to donate to them. So I kind of like that idea that there's a cutoff point. If you've got that, you can survive. And I think we should all aim to make sure that everyone has at least the amount they need to survive in the world. Resh, as I said, is a double letter. You don't tend to see it with the dagesh. And so we don't really know how it was pronounced before, but I imagine there was a r sound and a sound, and that's maybe the difference with or without the dot. But nobody really sees it these days. It's a double letter, though. It's one of the double letters. There are 7 double letters, and this is a 6th of them. The double letters, obviously, as there's 7 of them, they signify days in time, the days of the week. But there are also 7 planets associated with the double letters. One of them is a star called the sun. Obviously, in ancient times, he didn't know everything about planets and stars and satellites, such as the moon. And there's also not only days of the week and these 7 planets are associated with these 7 double letters, but also the 7 openings in the head, which is why they're ascribed different openings in the head, because there's 7 of them. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and 1 mouth. Probably that's why we should be very careful what we speak, because there's just the 1 mouth. We should listen more and speak less. Aria Kaplan, in his version of Sefer Yetzirah, also says what days they all refer to, and I've been using those, and says Resh is Friday, and it has a quality about it, peace. Some pets say seed, the next of what things are going to become, or peace, between that idea of Tiferet, beauty, harmony, and Yesod, foundation. That could be either piece or seed, because Yesod, a foundation, is going to, in the Sephirah, is going to become something. And in the body, if it's going to be one of the body parts, it's going to be the left nostril. Other people give different, there are different versions of Sefer Yetzirah. It's a very ancient text, and there's slightly different versions of it. Of those planets, Resh is given Saturn, which has a quality about it: inaction, invulnerability, and poverty. And so the poor person can be associated with a Resh. The Talmud gives slightly different versions of it, and it gives Resh as a religious inclination. It gives it different ones, but I'm sticking mainly with the Sefer Yetzirah version. As I said, it's a double letter. It's 6 of 7, and it's associated with one of the lines of those 32 gates of creation. And the gate it is associated with is the sentence, God saw that it was good. In space, as I said, it's Saturn. In the world, in time, it's Friday. And in the body, it's the left nostril. And here it is in these 32 gates, these 32 sentences of creation, which are associated either with the Sephirah from those 10 Sephirah, or one of the letters, the simple ones, the double ones, or the mother ones, as you well know by now. The Resh is down here. It's the 6 of the double letters. God saw that it was good, and that it's associated with that. So I thought we would do a meditation to finish on the Resh, and make it a moment where you can just sit back and relax and think about certain connections, I guess, between the Resh and between you and what's going on in your lives. So take a moment just to breathe in and out, and particularly out. Letting go and relaxing is very important. And just relax into your seat and where you're at. And we'll meditate a little bit on Resh. The Resh of inaction that doesn't do anything much. The passive, maybe, waiting for somebody to help. The poverty of doing the right thing. Maybe Resh holds itself back because it's worried about the Rasha side of itself, as opposed to the Rosh, the beginning side of itself. And I guess we're all in that balance between worrying we'll do the wrong thing and hoping we'll be doing the right thing. The Rasha and the Rosh. And that can stop us doing anything. Somewhere between that balance, we have to find that balance, that Tiferet balance, to actually start something. Yesod, foundation, in those Sephirot. And maybe that's the balance a lot of us worry about, whether we're doing something for the good, the Rosh, the leadership, the good thing, or the Rasha, for our egos and just our own gratification. It's a very hard place to be, and we are all in it. So think about what you're planning to do and why you don't do it, and what's stopping you from doing it. And perhaps it's that tension, not bad tension, good tension, between the Rosh, that leading, and the Rasha. Sometimes our inaction is procrastination for perfection, and sometimes it's because we're being considered and wise, and it's best to pause. And we have to hold those tensions together to decide on the Rosh and the Rasha.